The nation's much debated Burqa ban comes into force, sparking global discussions about religious rights, security, and of course, cultural identity. This new law, approved by a narrow majority of Swiss voters in 2021 in a referendum by about 52%, prohibits facial coverings in public places, with exceptions for health, safety, and certain cultural or artistic contexts. Now, Switzerland has joined a growing list of European nations, navigating the fine line between collective security and personal freedoms. But this is a step towards social cohesion or a veiled attempt at discrimination. We're trying to decode that. What does it mean for Switzerland's famed commitment to neutrality and human rights? And what message does this send to the global Muslim community? Well, joining me here on the broadcast to unpack all of this is Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali, Islamic scholar and Director General, Wisdom Foundation. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am, and a very good evening as well. We're talking about religious freedom versus regulation. And I just quickly want to know, get the snowball rolling here, how are you interrupting this new ban that's come about in Switzerland in the context of course, the religious freedoms and personal choice, the two sides on the Libra scales?
The first thing that I should like to say is thank you for inviting me to the show. Is that yes, before we get into the personal freedoms, I would like to be very specifically clear on this fact that there has to be a line drawn as to what is hijab. Is it religious or is it cultural? And is it mandatory or is it non-mandatory? So here you see, I think there is a lot of misunderstanding and misapprehension which has been brought about, by, shall we say, a rather orthodox clerical interpretation that has somehow dominated the scene, and women, where women have been sometimes they opt for it, and sometimes even they don't opt for it. They have been put behind what you call the hijab. So here I should like to be very clear that there has to be, there is a wide range of dimensions that one has to understand when you deal with this debate. And the first thing that I would like to point out that hijab was not introduced by Islam. Hijab, the greatest misunderstanding is that hijab was not introduced by Islam. You could see it in the Arabs in their statuettes depicting veiled priestesses, which dates back to 2500 BC. So it goes back at that time. And you find that the elitist women in Mesopotamia, Byzantine, Greece, Persian empires wore the veil as a mark of respectability. So it was a cultural thing that was accepted much, much before the advent of Islam. And you find that, that veiling and seclusion have appeared very strongly in both Hellenistic and Byzantinic cultures. So, in the area among and in the Sasanians of Persia. And here, when we come directly to what is the burqa, or when we come to a ban, what do we mean by it? I think that, what Switzerland has not said that a woman cannot dress as she pleases. It has facial coverings. There should be no facial coverings. And the Quran does not make that mandatory at all. As a matter of fact, the words burqa, abaya, niqab, etc., some words are not equivalent, are not used in the Quran. And the word hijab itself is not equivalent to clothing. And that is a big
So, ma'am,
misunderstanding. It is.
if I could put this question across, I mean, you've given us a basic understanding of how this is not something that's been introduced by Islam. We're talking about a long journey of emancipation of women, and this is not just Muslim women, women in general, and they've gone through different fights over the course of history. I mean, turn those history book pages as well. I'm trying to understand, with Switzerland now joining this long list of other European countries as well, with what's happening in Gaza and Israel, anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, tendencies getting, we're seeing an uptick in these tendencies across the world. What is the larger message that has now gone to the global Muslim community?
You see, it is very unfortunate that, the Gaza, the Gaza itself is a tragedy, because you have the murder of women and children, which is the protests should have been much more in every part of the world, Though there have been protests, the protests should have been much more. And yes, the message that is going in is that the Muslims are have to live within those certain limitations, and this kind of a slaughter, what I consider to be a brutal genocide that has been accepted by European countries, is still continuing. It just shows that they want to claim the land that does not belong to them. But that is another issue. When we come, I do not want to mix
Digress. Let's not
politics.
digress over here.
I just not digress from the issue of what we talk about women's emancipation. The Quran has given women full rights. When it is spoken about even the hijab, it has told men to lower their glance first, and then for women to lower their glance and to guard their modesty. So it is for both men and women. But when we talk to this technical kind of hijab that is coming in the form of a robe, there has been no mention of any kind of a dress code, except for modesty. The word that has been used is modesty, and the word hijab, therefore, simply means, I'm talking about the best of dictionaries and lexicographers who have translated this word. The word means that in Arabic it means screen, it means curtain, it means a barrier or a partition. It is nowhere, considered to be a clothing. It is not a piece of clothing. So that's the point number one. And the word the Quran is using is khimar, and it is using jilbab. And in the old days, when women used to dress, they had this they used to have this a veil that that they used to wear it from the back of their heads, but the gown in front used to give was a long slit where the private parts of the woman were displayed, and therefore it was said that cover your modesty, be modest, cover yourself in such a way that you're not molested. And this actually happened in Medina when a woman when used to go up early in the morning to
All
attend
right.
to the offices of Burqa or to buy milk. They were attacked because their bodies were seen. And so it was said that when you go out, use a garment that people do not attack you. So, that was the word, and the other word was jilbab. So, these are the words that are used for clothing and not hijab. Today, we have popularly used the word hijab, which is actually used as a substitute for khimar or for jilbab. And nowhere does the Quran say that that a woman cannot conduct her activities, or it is a compulsory. There is no such thing as any kind of a mandatory compulsory dress. And you find that recently you find that I think in the early 2000, in the 2000, I think 11 it was, that Imam Mutlaq, from Saudi Arabia, who is one of the greatest clerics, has said that even what they call the abaya is not compulsory. So, and it was said that you have to dress modestly, like men do. You
Ma'am,
don't expose your
I
private
honestly
parts.
feel, there's so much that's lost in, translation. There's so much
That's
that's
right,
lost in
lost in
interpretation as well.
translation.
You're
And
talking about 2500 BCE. You've given us a historical anecdote from Medina. But cut to 2025, the 1st of January, the ban has kicked
yes,
in. And I'm trying to understand why the hijab that you say is not something that has been introduced by Islam per se. It's not compulsory. We're talking about modesty of a woman. A man's supposed to,
yes.
lower down his glance. A woman's supposed to do the same, cover their modesty, is what we're picking up. But I'm trying to understand this cultural symbol. Why has the hijab become a cultural symbol across Europe? We're looking at gender versus culture, and this is a completely different ballgame altogether, because this is now turned into a religious cultural symbol in itself, the hijab. And I think
Thank you.
that's the bone of
Thank you for
contention
that
here.
question. Thank you for that question. I think it's a very important question. You see, the revival of this term and the kind of emphasis that it has been laid down, because you look at women in Afghanistan. If you look at women in Afghanistan pre 1970, or before the Taliban took over, they were doctors, they were professionals, they were lawyers, they were artists, they were thinkers, they were educationalists. And you find that some of the greatest contributions have been made by women in Afghanistan till the Taliban did not take over. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the Taliban are anywhere close to being scholars. They were never known. They were tribals, and they were never known to be scholars. So and you find that in 1970s, when this term was revived, it became the center of feminism and nationalistic discourse. It was used as a symbol for nationalistic discourse, because you see the British and the French who had taken over, the division of the territories, as at that period of time. Uh, Earlier than that, and the emphasis was that, this is Britain and this is how you are. So the Muslims said that this is what we are, this is what we want to symbolize. So it took a hold of people more as a political identity norm than anything else. You see, so here you find that in the nationalist discourse of Egypt, especially, which had British colonial occupation, this term was used, and ever since it has been popularized more as identity that I am with so and so, I am Zenat, and this is what I am, and this is what is going to be my cultural identity, and this is how I'm going to translate it. Now, it became a term of that nature, which and there were huge debates on the subject by women themselves. There was a section of women who did not want to fall into line with that kind of thinking. And they said, yes, you can have your political identity and your religious identity, but you don't have to use, the hijab as a symbol. Whereas the others argued that, when we are in the company of men and we enter politics, we feel safer when we have this particular kind of a dress. So that became the opposing forces. But to come to your question, that the face covering, Imam Tahtawi in his class has debated. He was the rector of the Egyptian University, the one of the greatest thinkers that the world has produced in the world of Islam.
Okay.
Has said that there's never any kind of face covering. So you see, and later on, you see,
And
even in countries like
it doesn't just talk about the niqab or the hijab. It talks about ski masks as well. We're looking at public security and safety as well. Dr. Shaukat Ali, if before we wrap this segment up, one final question: is there any weightage in terms of what the critics are now saying?
what are the critics saying?
Well, I can read some of those instances out for you. The critics, these are arguments that are against the ban. They say it discriminates against Muslim women's clothing choices, violates personal freedom and individual rights, reinforces stereotypes about Islam and extremism, talks about distracting from real societal integration challenges, and etc.
No, but
etc.
I think that some of these are very valid arguments. But
Okay.
on the other side, you see that there are Muslim countries. Please note a number of Muslim countries. I have a list of them here somewhere that have, that have themselves, very slowly by stages, banned the hijab, and and even till today. Now there are countries like Kazakhstan. Here is the list. See, Kazakhstan has called this kind of a black robe that people wear and cover their faces, what
Right.
you call the niqab, only with the eye slits
Right.
being
Right.
shown, as alien garments. And
Alien
they are not
garment,
permitted.
as an alien garment.
That is the word that I have got from them, is that they call it an alien garment. Then in
Right.
Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, in Kyrgyzstan, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing the word. Since 2016, 2010, they have been discovered, Kosovo, 2009. So you have these debates, and they have, for example, in public schools, in government buildings, in universities, they have not been allowed. These are not allowed to be worn. So in your private sphere, you can say that you if you want to wear something in the private sphere, you're going shopping or you're with a family gathering, you're free to do. But when you are entering a public space, then that
Or a
is the
public
kind of that
building,
Muslim
then you have to you must adhere to what the federal structure actually demands of you. Know what, doctor, I think this is a situation, because you've pointed out to Kazakhstan, you pointed out to Azerbaijan as well. I think it's a case of how purely and organically are the immigrants and the migrants able to integrate themselves into the social fabric
That's right.
and the social
Yes.
ethos of any country. That might happen in Switzerland, might not happen in Switzerland. Well, we'll have to wait and find out for that to happen.